Every decision you've ever made has created an infinite number of copies of you. Right now, as you read this, there are countless versions of yourself living completely different lives. In some, you never clicked on this video. In others, you became a doctor instead of whatever you are now. In one universe, you are probably dead. In another, you might be the most powerful person on earth. But here's what will keep you awake tonight. Somewhere out there, another version of you is reading these exact words for the first time, while yet another version stopped reading 3 sentences ago and will never know what I'm about to tell you. This isn't science fiction. This isn't philosophy. This is what the mathematics of my own discoveries forced me to confront, and it terrified me more than anything else I ever encountered in physics. My name is Albert Einstein, and I discovered something that made me wish I had never been born. The weight of this knowledge crushed my spirit. I would lie awake in my bed in Princeton, staring at the ceiling, knowing that somewhere in the infinite expanse of parallel realities, another version of me was also lying awake, tormented by the same impossible truth. And somewhere else, a version of me had never made this discovery at all, and was sleeping peacefully, blissfully ignorant of what I had unleashed upon humanity. Let me tell you why I spent my final years trying to prove my own greatest work was wrong. Why I fought against the very equations that made me famous. Why I died believing the universe was playing a cosmic joke on humanity. Why I would sit in my study at 112 Mercer Street, surrounded by blackboards covered in desperate calculations, trying to find some escape from the mathematical prison I had built. But first, let me ask you something that would haunt you. If infinite versions of you exist, which one is the real you? And how do you know you're not just a fleeting dream in the mind of some other version of yourself? The terror began with a simple question about light that would consume my life. Picture this. You're standing on a train platform on a crisp Swiss morning. The air smells of coal smoke and fresh bread from the nearby bakery. A train rushes past you at incredible speed, its wheels screaming against the metal track, the wind from its passage whipping your hair across your face. On that train, someone turns on a flashlight. Here's what should happen according to common sense. The light from that flashlight should move at the speed of light, plus the speed of the train. Just like if you throw a ball forward from a moving car, the ball moves faster than if you threw it while standing still. Physics should be intuitive, predictable, safe. But light doesn't behave this way. No matter how fast the train moves, whether it's creeping at 1 mile per hour or somehow racing at half the speed of light itself, the light always travels at exactly the same speed. Always. 290,458 meters per second. Unvarying. Absolute. This should be impossible. I sat with this puzzle for months in my cramped office at the Swiss patent office, feeling the familiar weight of confusion pressing against my skull like a vise tightening with each passing day. The numbers didn't lie, but they made no sense. How could light ignore the motion of its source? Why did the universe seem to conspire to keep this one speed constant above all else? My colleagues would find me there late into the evening, surrounded by crumpled papers and cold coffee, my hair even more disheveled than usual, muttering equations under my breath like incantations against an invisible enemy. They thought I was going mad. Perhaps I was. Then one afternoon in 1905, as I watched the clock tower burn through my office window, something clicked. The ticking of that clock seemed to mock me with its steady rhythm. Tick, tick, tick. But what if that rhythm wasn't as steady as it appeared? What if time itself wasn't the constant, reliable foundation I had always assumed it to be? The thought hit me like lightning, tearing through my brain, illuminating dark corners of possibility I had never imagined. What if time could slow down? What if space could compress? What if the universe bent and twisted reality itself to keep light speed constant? I grabbed my pen and began scribbling equations frantically across every available surface. My hand was trembling so violently I could barely control the pen. The math was leading me somewhere I didn't want to go, but I couldn't stop following the logical chain of reasoning. Each equation demanded the next. Each conclusion forced me deeper into a rabbit hole of cosmic horror. If time slows down when you move fast enough, if space contracts, then simultaneity, the idea that two events happen at the same time, becomes meaningless. What happens now for you might happen later for someone else. The present moment, that knife edge of experience that seems so real, so immediate, so undeniably now, is just an illusion, a trick of perspective. But the implications didn't stop there. They never do. Each answer only reveals more terrifying question. If there's no universal now, then the future already exists. All of it. Every moment that will ever happen is already out there, frozen in what we physicists call the block universe. Your birth, your death, every heartbreak, every triumph, every word you will ever speak, every tear you will ever shed, all of it exists simultaneously in the mathematical structure of space-time, laid out like frames in an infinite film reel. The implications made me physically sick. I would pace my small apartment at night, feeling nauseous, knowing that if this was true, then free will was nothing but an elaborate illusion. Every choice you think you're making has already been made. Every decision is predetermined, written into the fabric of reality itself before you were even born. The universe is just a four-dimensional movie playing out, and you're nothing more than a character following a pre-written script, believing in your own agency while dancing to the tune of mathematical inevitability. I tried to fight this conclusion with every fiber of my being. I spent years looking for ways around it, desperate loopholes in the mathematics that might preserve some sense of meaning, some vestige of human agency. I famously said God does not play dice with the universe, not because I believed in a traditional God, but because I needed to believe the universe had some kind of purpose, some underlying order that wasn't just the random unfolding of predetermined possibilities. I would have heated arguments with Niels Bohr and the other quantum physicists, not just about the technical details of probability and wave functions, but about the very soul of reality itself. They seemed almost comfortable with uncertainty, with the idea that the universe might be fundamentally random at its core, but I couldn't accept it. Not because the mathematics was wrong. The mathematics was beautiful, elegant, undeniably correct, but because the philosophical implications were unbearable. But the mathematics didn't care about my philosophical comfort. The equations were pitiless machines, grinding out conclusions whether I liked them or not. They demanded that I accept something even more disturbing than predestination, something that would make the predetermined block universe seem like a comforting fairy tale by comparison. They demanded that I accept the existence of infinite parallel realities. Here's how it happened, and why it's not just possible, but mathematically inevitable. Every quantum event in the universe has multiple possible outcomes. An electron can be in multiple places at once until it's observed. A particle can spin clockwise and counterclockwise simultaneously. A photon can pass through two slits at the same time. This isn't a limitation of our knowledge or measurement tools. It's a fundamental property of reality at the smallest scale. But here's where my work on relativity created a connection I never wanted to make. According to my equations about the nature of space-time, each of these quantum possibilities doesn't just exist as an abstract mathematical description. Each possibility corresponds to a different branch of reality, a complete universe with its own timeline, its own version of every star, every planet, every person. When a quantum event collapses into one outcome in our observable universe, the other possibilities don't simply vanish like smoke in the wind. They become real in parallel universes that continue to exist and evolve, each following its own path through the infinite garden of possibility. Think about this carefully, because the scale is beyond anything the human mind was designed to comprehend. Right now, at this very moment, there are countless quantum events happening in your brain alone. Neurons deciding whether to fire or not fire. Synapses forming or failing to form. Neurotransmitters binding to receptors or drifting away unused. Each decision represents millions upon millions of quantum possibilities, each spawning its own complete reality. In this universe, you decided to keep reading these words, but in another universe, you got distracted by a sound outside your window and never finished this sentence. In yet another, you never clicked on this video at all. In one universe, you decided to read this aloud. In another, you're reading it silently, but your internal voice sounds completely different. In some realities, you're not even human at all, but some other form of consciousness capable of understanding these concepts. Each possibility spawns its own complete reality, with its own version of you, complete with all your memories, your relationships, your fears, your dreams, but with that one crucial difference that sets that timeline apart from this one. The number of parallel universes isn't just large, it isn't just astronomically large, it's infinite in a way that makes even infinity seem insufficient. Every quantum event in every atom in every star in every galaxy creates new branches of reality, and the rate at which this happens is so fast, so continuous, that the multiverse grows exponentially with each passing nanosecond. Do you understand what this means for your existence? Let me paint you a picture that will keep you awake for weeks. There's a universe where you're reading this exact script, but you're 20 years older and your life went completely different. There's one where you're the same age, but you have entirely different memories of how you got here. There's a universe where Earth never formed because a cosmic collision happened slightly differently 4 billion years ago. One where humans evolved from reptiles instead of mammals, and you have scales instead of skin, but still somehow developed the same capacity for abstract thought. There's a universe where you have 6 fingers on each hand and consider 5-fingered humans to be deformed. One where colors are sounds and sounds are colors, and synesthesia is the normal way of perceiving reality. One where gravity pushes instead of pulls, and entire civilizations live on the undersides of planets. There are universes where you're not you at all, but you still have all your memories and experiences and genuinely believe you're the same person reading these words right now. There are universes where I never existed. Someone else with my exact thoughts and memory wrote these exact equations and came to the same horrifying conclusion. There are infinite copies of this conversation happening right now with tiny meaningless variations. A different word here, a slightly different inflection there. Here's the part that shattered my sanity completely. The realization that drove me to spend my final decades in desperate, futile attempts to prove my own theories wrong. In some universes you're listening to this with completely different ears attached to a completely different body, but your consciousness remains essentially the same. In others you're not human at all, but something else entirely. Silicon-based life forms, pure energy beings, digital consciousnesses running on quantum computers. Yet somehow you evolved the exact same thoughts, the same curiosity, the same capacity for existential dread that brought you to this moment. Which version is real? Which consciousness is actually yours? Which set of memories and experiences represents the true you? The answer is all of them, and none of them. This realization destroyed my faith in individual identity more completely than any philosophical argument ever could. If infinite copies of you exist across infinite realities, then you becomes a meaningless concept. You're not special. You're not unique. You're not even singular. You're just one random frame in an infinite film reel of slightly different versions of the same story, playing out across dimensions you'll never see. I spent my later years desperately trying to find a way out of this conclusion, working 18-hour days in my study, covering blackboard after blackboard with equations that might somehow restore meaning to individual existence. I developed my unified field theory partly to escape the implications of quantum mechanics and parallel universe. I wanted to find a deterministic universe where there was only one reality, one timeline, one version of each person living one authentic life. I failed. Every experiment confirmed the mathematics. Every observation supported the theory. Every attempt to find a loophole only strengthened the case for infinite parallel universe. The universe really is split into infinite parallel branches, and we're just randomly experiencing one of them with no control over which one we happen to end up in. But the horror doesn't end there. It never ends. Parallel universes are real, then every possible version of reality exists somewhere in the infinite multiverse. That means there are universes where unspeakable horrors are the norm. Universes where every possible form of suffering is maximized and prolonged. Infinite worlds where pain and despair are the fundamental constants instead of physics and mathematics. But it also means there are universes of infinite joy, infinite beauty, infinite love, infinite peace. Realities where every possible form of happiness exists in its purest form. The problem is, you have absolutely no control over which universe you experience. It's completely, utterly, meaninglessly random. You could just as easily have been born into a hellish reality where torture is the natural state of all conscious beings, as you could have been born into a paradise where suffering doesn't exist. The fact that you're in this particular universe, reading these particular words, thinking these particular thoughts, is nothing more than pure cosmic chance. There's no deeper reason, no purpose, no meaning behind which reality became yours. This randomness extends to everything you've ever done or will do. In some universes, my equations led to technologies that ended war forever and created a golden age of human prosperity. In others, they led directly to weapons that destroyed all life on Earth within decades of their discovery. When I worked on the Manhattan Project, I had no way to know which outcome I was helping to create. Both were equally real, equally inevitable somewhere in the infinite tapestry of parallel reality. The weight of infinite responsibility across infinite realities drove me to the edge of madness during my final years. How do you live with the knowledge that every action you take creates infinite consequences, most of which you'll never see or understand? Do you want to know the cruelest part? Even if you could somehow travel between parallel universes, even if you had access to some impossible technology that let you hop from reality to reality, like stepping stones across a cosmic river, you'd never find the best version of your life. For every universe where things turned out better for you, there's one where they turned out worse. For every peak of happiness, there's a valley of despair. The infinite nature of the multiverse means there's always something better, and always something worse, stretching infinitely in both directions. You could search for eternity and never find the optimal version of yourself, because there isn't one. There's no best possible you, because better is a meaningless concept when applied to infinity. There's always another universe where you made one more good decision, avoided one more mistake, loved one more person, achieved one more dream. This is why I fought against quantum mechanics until my death in 1955, alone in a hospital bed in Princeton, still muttering equations under my breath. Not because I didn't understand the science, I understood it better than almost anyone alive. Not because the mathematics was flawed, the mathematics was perfect, beautiful, inevitable. I fought against it because I understood too well where it led. Imagine knowing that every mistake you've ever made, someone else is making right now in a parallel universe, experiencing that same shame, that same regret for the first time. Every tragedy you've lived through, someone else is living through right now, feeling their heart break in exactly the same way yours did. Every moment of joy you've experienced, someone else is having it taken away from them at this very moment. Your worst day? Somewhere, it's someone else's best day. Your greatest triumph? Somewhere else, it's someone else's crushing defeat. The suffering is infinite, the joy is infinite, and it's all happening simultaneously across the vast, uncaring landscape of parallel realities. But here's what might be the most terrifying thought of all, the one that kept me awake during those final nights in Princeton. If infinite universes exist, then this conversation has happened infinite times before. You've read these exact words infinite times, in infinite variations. I've thought these exact thoughts infinite times, with infinite small differences. We're trapped in an infinite loop of repetition, with only meaningless variations. Sometimes you stop breathing here and walk away disturbed, but ultimately unchanged. Sometimes you read to the very end and have a complete existential crisis. Sometimes you share this with others who dismiss you as crazy. Sometimes you become obsessed with parallel universe theory and spend years studying it. All of these outcomes happen over and over, forever. You think you have free will? You think you're making a choice right now about whether to continue reading, but you're just playing out one of infinite predetermined scripts. Every choice you think you're making has been made infinite times before by infinite versions of yourself. The you that chose to read this far isn't special. You're not the chosen one. You're not the main character of reality. You're not even particularly remarkable. You're just one random sample from an infinite population of slightly different copies, each believing they're the real one, each convinced their experiences are unique and meaningful. So here's my final question, the one that haunted me until I drew my last breath in that hospital room in New Jersey. If everything that can happen does happen, if every possible universe exists, if infinite copies of yourself are living infinite variations of your life right now, then what's the point of anything? Why try to be good if evil versions of you exist somewhere in the multiverse doing unspeakable things? Why strive for happiness if miserable versions of you are guaranteed to exist in realities where suffering is the default state? Why fear death if immortal versions of you live forever in other realities? Why celebrate your achievements if failed versions of you are experiencing crushing defeat? The mathematics I discovered suggests that nothing you do ultimately matters, because every possible version of what you could do is happening somewhere. Your choices don't change anything fundamental, because all possible choices are being made by infinite versions of yourself across infinite realities. This is the price of understanding the universe too deeply. This is why I spent my final years trying to prove that God doesn't play dice. Not because I believed in the traditional God, but because I desperately needed to believe the universe had some kind of meaning, some kind of purpose, beyond infinite random repetition of every possible variation of existence. I failed to find that meaning. The equation's one. Reality is infinite. Consciousness is an illusion. Individual choice is meaningless, and we're all just temporary fluctuations in an endless sea of possibility. Convinced of our own importance while being nothing more than background noise in the cosmic symphony of infinite parallel realities. But perhaps there's still hope hidden somewhere in this mathematical nightmare. Maybe somewhere in the infinite multiverse there's a version of reality where these problems have solutions, where consciousness means something beyond mere pattern recognition, where individual choice matters more than statistical inevitability. Maybe the version of you reading this is the one who figures it out. Maybe you're the one who finds meaning in meaninglessness, purpose in randomness, hope in infinite despair. Or maybe not. Maybe that's happening in a different universe, and this version of you is destined to live with the same terrifying uncertainty that drove me to spend my final years in desperate failed attempts to prove my own theories wrong, to find some escape from the mathematical prison I had built around the concept of individual existence. I'll never know. I died before finding the answers, alone with my equations and my regrets. But you still have time. In this universe, anyway. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? And more importantly, does it matter what you do when infinite versions of yourself are making every possible choice in infinite variations across infinite realities? Think about that tonight when you're lying in bed trying to sleep. Think about all your other selves, lying in similar beds in similar rooms, having similar thoughts, wondering if they're the real you or just another copy in the infinite library of possibility. And remember, somewhere out there, another version of you just finished reading these words for the first time, while another version stopped reading hours ago and will never know how this ends. Sweet dreams, all infinite versions of them.